Well, this should be feature complete if there ever is such a thing on a rig. I've had a build thread going since sometime around February since I started building this, and I had one person ask me to do a walkthrough, so here it is. There are a few things that I chose to do differently based on the original P1 platform. Obviously the NLR V3 mount is custom, but it's not like it was unique. Many people used the pieces of aluminum angle and bolted from underneath there. Since the seat is sprung underneath, it works real well with one transducer bolted to the base. Almost everything is transferred straight into the seat of the pants and doesn't get put into the frame. Likewise on the front, there's motor mount cushions in place that keep a lot of that vibration from going into the frame, but you do feel it in the heels of your feet. The only exception to that is the transducer mounted on the wheel slash shifts and whatnot, and that gives me engine RPM, a little bit of bumps. So it all works together very, very nicely. The 8-pole connector is really smooth. I've got it broken down. So currently the front's in stereo and they're adjusted together. The wheel and the seat are separate in terms of how much power I give them independently. The motion system is set up right now where this one little bolt is the center of the NLR V3. So I try to make sure that's effectively where the seat of my pants are, to put less load on the motor and to make it smoother. The seat belt, as you can see, is mounted in a way that moves with the chair as it's going. The headrest was getting in the way of my valve index, so I built this. It's just got some acrylic rods so it slides easily, and has 2 aluminum posts that fit down into the seat itself so it doesn't move. I recently added this to hold the headset so it doesn't fall over away from me while I'm on the rig doing other things. It's real handy. This is how I've learned to put it with the cable away from me so I don't have a tripping hazard. It seems to be working real well. The new wheel hanger seems to be working real well. I've only used it once at this point. I'm mostly in driver mode and currently only have one wheel. Expect that to change at some point. The mouse is in a very convenient location. When I'm sitting, everything falls to hand, so I'm able to just put my hand and make adjustments. So for example, in iRacing, I've got a button down here mapped for the Alt-K function for moving the black box button. So I click that, move things around depending on the car I'm in. And other than the paddle shifters, the sequential is right here, and it's angled towards me right about straight with my arm, how it lines up. Same with the handbrake. It's actually on 2 pivots, so I was able to tighten them part way, pull back, and line up so it hit the exact angle that I naturally pull at. The shift is the same way. It's angled out where it lines up well with my shoulder, and it's also tilted down partly, so it's a natural slope as far as I can see. The button box, which is working well right now, it's a little bit tight for VR, so I'm getting ready to put something together that's a little more vertical that comes up through here. It'll actually be more like an inverted L where it's going to wrap around, and so I'll have larger switch gear and larger buttons spread out easier and made so that I can feel for position very quickly and go straight to controls without having any problems with that. Loving the new Precision Sim Engineering wheel. It feels great. It's absolutely solid. There's no rattles in it. The shifters are fantastic. They just feel good. Everything about it, just all the switch gear feels well, and I have no regrets on that. I still use this when I'm pulling this thing out. It still makes a difference. One thing that a lot of SimLab people would tend to wonder is why I don't have the vertical front face on this, and that's simply a matter of how the stock uprights are. I would need about 800 millimeter tall uprights in order to handle the height I would need. So this bolt would need to line up with about, it comes down a little bit, but according to the measurements, I can't get a vertical on here unless I either raise the uprights and try to bring them up higher off the ground, which I don't like, or I just replace them. And I just have a trouble right now with having rather large chunks of 80/20 material just sitting there collecting dust. So the other thing is with the wheel plate here, I can do things like put the mouse right here, which is just perfect. If they extend up further and the vertical thing came across, I'd have to find some other place to put it. And I'm not saying I couldn't find another solution, but this seems to be working really well with how this is set up. The emergency button down there is working great. I know a couple people had asked me if I accidentally hit it, and I've not had any issues with that, but it's real easy for me to get with my leg, which I've currently only had to do once. Yeah, I'm walking around barefoot. I suppose I should have some shoes on. The the other issue, I guess, I've seen the new P1X, and it's very cool. I don't know how well the P1X would work for stowing a bunch of electronics inside, since the side rails come down. It does have some additional plugs on it, but I actually do slide this around quite a bit, so reaching in there would be more problematic with the 1X versus the P1 as I've got it. I've got a little set point down there for where I want it when I have people coming over. Frequently they're either a little shorter than me and I have to slide it forward a little, or if I set it up to use it with the flight gear, the entire thing slides all the way forward to the end of the rail, and then it's completely out of the way of me dropping in the flight pedals. The way the USB box is working, and by the way, I've had absolutely zero problems. I've never had it drop out. It works great with the Husingfeld pedals and everything else I've got, but it is an 8-port hub. So since I've added the SimuCube 2 Pro and I have a wired steering wheel, not everything has a place. So they're labeled, and right now I've got the handbrake disconnected, and I've also got the pedals set for GT racing, so I'm not using the clutch pedal. I'm just left foot in the brake and right foot on the throttle. For the other type driving, when I am driving, say like the MX-5 or something in iRacing, then I just loosen these bolts. There's currently 9 bolts in here, but I've only got them hand twisted from the ball end of the Allen key. So it's like I just give them each like a half twist or so, loosen them, slide it over, and then slide it back when I'm done and tighten it down. So that's worked out real well. I probably don't need 9 bolts, but I figured why not? I had room for them. Now what I did lose, if you watched any of my earlier build, is my dead pedal, which I still could keep, I could create a longer plate that extended out and had the dead pedal so that when I'm using a clutch and needed a place to rest my foot, I could move things over. And I realize that isn't something people do a whole lot, but I still like it, and I may still do that. But right now it looks a little cleaner without having the dead pedal hanging off the edge. Now I did modify the original P1, which had it had two 40 by 40s back here, and I put in a single 120 by 40, and it's significantly stiffer, and I don't have any deflection with the brake pedal anymore. Let's see, as you can see, I've got the two power supplies mounted down there. I got some short run 1-foot power cables so they'd run smoothly. They're actually, there's a little piece of Velcro at the front and the back, and there's a strap, which isn't really noticeable in here right now, but I made a couple brackets on a mill a little while back as something to learn with. This is something I added recently, which I still like. The heel stop, it's very comfortable. I have already moved the brake or the throttle up a couple notches so that it's easier for me to get to a full throttle with this. I may shorten the travel just a bit because I did feel like my heel was moving a little bit too much on the plate. We'll see how that works. Everything's still a work in progress, but and you can see how the button box is mounted back here with the RAM connector. That's still working well. It's not a fully rigid connection, but it works well enough that I can get to all the switch gear on there. But what I'm going to mount will be more of a solid mount to the vertical here. So, and I may end up moving this out to the side of that, or it may become integral with the box where this just bolts right into the box somehow. I don't know how that's going to, it'll get here when it gets here, I guess. And everything has been just see what works, iterate. The wheel deck, I haven't felt any loss of anything. It feels utterly rigid to me. When I move it, the entire rig moves. Of course, I've got it on wheels right now, but with it down, it's very, very solid. So even though Barry would probably say that it's not as good as having the vertical connector, and maybe it's not, I'm simply not noticing it just yet. So you never know. Let's see, anything else to mention about it? I guess it might be worth mentioning some of the gear over here, even though it's not directly part of it. That's running an i9-96 or 9900K with 2080 Ti, 32 gig of memory at 32 megahertz or 3200 megahertz. The power is run so that when I power up the strip that powers up the PC, it also turns on the left front base station for the index, and it also powers up the transducer amplifier. There's a charger back here for the index controllers, but it's connected to the outlet for the AV system. There's also a secondary audio card in there so I can mirror through the AV system and have 5.1 surround sound in here. And then another plug goes into the wall to feed everything that's on the rig itself. So it's a pretty good distribution of things. I don't have everything in the rig, so obviously it's not carrying the computer around or that amplifier around, but since it's just a quarter twist, I consider that well within the realm of convenient enough to keep it where it is. And since I do full room scale, having the computer separate works out real well. Now for the keyboard, I don't have a keyboard tray on here. As you can see, it's there's not a lot of room here for a keyboard tray, and I personally am not a big fan. Now what I've got is this little table that slides out real easily, and I can just pull it in, and if I'm using, say, Dirt Rally or something that requires I touch a keyboard, it's right there. With the next button box, I'm going to add some additional buttons and four-way sticks that I'm going to try to map to the arrow keys and get the escape and a few function keys going so that I can run some of those games without needing a keyboard present. But it slides out of the way, and the mouse itself is just sitting on some non-skid tape and then fits in between the little pieces of felt. I might come up with something a little prettier than that, but it works well, and it also allows me to sit the mouse down here when I'm playing room scale games. With regard to ventilation, I've got a fan set up right here, and I've got everything pulled back just so I could make this a little bit easier to record. But as you can see, the fan is shooting right back at me, and it keeps me plenty cool. I don't have any issues with heat at all. There is a ceiling fan directly over my head if I were to get hot for some reason, but so far that's been enough. And with the index, I leave the cover off of it, and you can actually feel air coming through the perforated holes. So there's no issues with fogging, and it's comfortable and doesn't get hot on me. So I can sit here and play pretty much until I get worn out without having any issues. And the seat's extremely comfortable. Now that's another issue that I'm not going to claim it's perfect. So I've got two areas that do have a little bit of flex. And originally I was thinking there was no flex in this, but playing rally games while you're being thrown around, it's not, the braking is not as critical as it is on a track. And once I started doing more track work, I started noticing the flex more between the NLR V3, which has a little bit of give to it, and the seat itself, which it does have enough here that even when it's being driven, you're usually pushing against it and it's active. And I'm running about 52 kilograms currently on the brake, and I'm able to modulate that pretty well. And most of the issues with driving are just in my head and have nothing to do with the rig. I think that will about do it.